Well, good evening, Chicago. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm really delighted to be here tonight, and I'm going to talk about the topic I'm most passionate about, which is diversity and inclusion. And I want to start with some headlines. So take a second to read these, and it's not hard to extrapolate that tech has a diversity problem, and it's a real big one. And the narrative on diversity in tech is always the same. The programmer culture is exclusionary. Where are the people of color? And women are being held back by sexism and bias. So I work with individuals and organizations to build diverse and inclusive workplaces. And there's one thing that I can tell you. Most people are well-intentioned. Famous quote, "I'm not biased," said by everyone. I have never worked with an organization where people think that they're biased. But the fact of the matter is, the way the human brain works, we are all vulnerable to our subconscious patterns of thought that influence our behavior and can lead us to act in a biased way. And in organizations, the way that bias manifests is who gets hired, who gets noticed, who gets promoted, and ultimately who succeeds. And so those headlines we saw, they keep perpetuating themselves. But I'm also here to tell you that diversity and inclusion in organizations is very important. We know that diverse and inclusive organizations, compared to ones that aren't, outperform them on every single financial indicator, whether it's sales, whether it's ROI, whether it's ROE. And diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams by on average 35%. And they also drive innovation because they come to better solutions quicker. So the bottom line is that diversity, and I truly believe this, it's the right thing to do, but it's really also the smart thing to do from a business perspective. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is flipping the script. Instead of talking about the diversity problem in tech or lamenting the lack of progress, why don't we talk about how tech has the opportunity, particularly HR tech, to actually help us solve some of these organizational challenges? So I want to start with recruitment. And I also want to say that bias can creep into every single facet of the talent management cycle. But we often hear in this business that I can't find talent. There's a lack of diversity in the pipeline. And what we need to do is start by attracting the right people. And you have companies like Textio that are doing things like analyzing job postings and looking for biased language and using predictive writing to actually suggest non-biased language. And doing simple things like replacing the word exemplary with extraordinary, for instance, actually helps to increase the number of women that apply. And when you cast a wider net, you catch more fish. So when you post non-biased language in your job posting or gender-friendly language, the time to fill decreases by 2 to 3 weeks. And that's money on the table for companies. And it also results in a wider talent pool. Johnson & Johnson used that, and they attracted 90,000 more women into their talent pipeline. And once you actually get people to apply, you need to evaluate them. And that's where AI-based candidate ranking comes in. And what we can do is actually program AI to look at objective criteria related to successful on-the-job performance, rather than hiring for cultural fit, which is truly subjective. And AI can be programmed to ignore things like gender, race, age, names, and it's less susceptible to the attractiveness of your LinkedIn profile or the school that you went to that a human recruiter can be susceptible to. And taking it even a step further, you have companies like Pymetrics that are using gamification. So they're taking AI and combining that with neuroscience games. They have over 70 criteria related to both cognitive and emotional indicators, and they're actually able to predict job fit based on, again, those individuals who are already successful in jobs. They did this with Unilever, assessed 250,000 candidates, and the result was an over 100% increase in gender, ethnic, and socioeconomic diversity. Does anyone know what today is? That's right. According to the World Economic Forum, it's going to take us more than 100 years to close the gender pay gap at the current rate of progress. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait 100 more years to be paid the same as a man who's already doing my job. So I think we need to make some progress. And there are a lot of tools out there that actually have the capability to analyze large volumes of data and tell you where you are in your organization. Is there a gap? At what point in the organization is that gap? How deep is it? And which employees is it affecting? And then you have companies like Gap Square that are even taking it a step further. And they're actually producing recommendations to help you figure out, are there structural problems, structural inequality that needs to be addressed? And how can we level the playing field for men and women? And again, the studies show that organizations with a narrower gender pay gap outperform those with a larger gender pay gap. So again, diversity and inclusion, it's an ethical thing to do, but it also makes good business sense. And the last thing I want to talk about is inclusion, because most of these have been focused on addressing demographic diversity, but demographic diversity without inclusion in an organization is truly meaningless. We need to leverage that diversity to create inclusive cultures. And one of the ways we can do that is using tools like virtual reality to create highly realistic, immersive, powerful experiences. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a disabled person in your organization, or the only person of color, or someone who's been the victim of bullying? Well, through these types of experiences, we're teaching people what it feels like and providing really those insights needed to build the soft skills and change behaviors. And it's also being used for recruiters to help make better decisions in selection and supervisors to lead through inclusion. So the light's gonna start blinking in like 15 seconds, so I'm gonna wrap up simply by saying, I've only scratched the surface here. And I'm not an AI prediction machine, but I am going to make a prediction. And I'm going to say that the organizations that can truly leverage the technology that's available today and apply it to solving our diversity and inclusion problems are going to be the ones leading in the workplaces of tomorrow, and they're the ones that are going to be rewriting those headlines that I started with. Thank you very much.